Downsized Jeep Cherokee and Jeep Grand Cherokee CamberiCaster adjusting lower ball joint. Problem: on late model Jeep vehicles, there is no provision for adjusting and maintaining specified camber and caster angles. Solution: replacing the factory lower non-adjustable ball joint with a CamberiCaster adjustable ball joint having a 1 3/4 degree adjustment range. Check alignment and determine CamberiCaster changes required. Raise the vehicle up by the frame rails just behind the lower suspension arm frame brackets. Remove the caliper, never allowing the brake hose to support the caliper weight. Always secure the brake caliper to a nearby suspension part with wire or by some other means. Remove the brake rotor. Mark a reference line from the hub and bearing assembly across the brake shield and steering knuckle for easier reassembly. Remove the ABS magnetic pickup. Use a 12-point socket to remove the 3 hub and bearing assembly bolts. Because of rust forming between the bearing carrier and the assembly, a slide hammer in conjunction with a hub puller is required to remove the axle shaft. Caution: while removing the axle shaft from its housing, care must be taken to avoid damaging the inner axle shaft oil seal in the differential. Disconnect the tie rod or drag link from the steering knuckle. Remove upper and lower ball joint spindle nuts. If the traditional method of separating the steering knuckle from its ball stud with repeated hammer blows does not work, try using a dome-shaped pneumatic smoothing hammer. Grind a V-shaped groove across the center of the dome. The V-shaped groove will help keep the tool in position when the air hammer is activated against the steering knuckle. Note, a special ball joint adapter set is needed for easy removal of the OE ball joint and the installation of the adjustable ball joint. See instruction sheet for which positioning stem is required for your brand of hand-operated ball joint press. Using the step-down extractor plug in a 4 1/4 inch receiver tube, assemble the ball joint press over the lower ball joint as shown. Turn the forcing screw until it contacts the joint. Check the alignment of all components, then tighten the forcing screw until the ball joint is removed. The adjustable ball joint has a reference arrow located on the bottom side of the ball joint. For positive camber adjustment, install the ball joint with a reference arrow pointing outward towards the tire. For negative camber adjustment, install the ball joint with a reference arrow pointing inward away from the tire. For caster changes combined with camber change, refer to the chart on the instruction sheet. Our example is for positive camber change and positive 3/4 degree caster change on the driver's side of the vehicle. Using the template provided, index the reference arrow to number 5 on the template. Clean any rust or dust away from the axle yoke. In order to keep from damaging the new dust boot during installation, place the joint only into the 3-inch installation tube. The dust boot and retaining ring will be installed after the ball joint has been pressed into the axle yoke. Position the adjustable ball joint under the axle yoke, making sure the reference arrow on the ball joint housing is facing in the proper direction, outward towards the tire for positive camber adjustment, or inward away from the tire for negative camber adjustment. For caster change combined with camber change, align the reference arrow to the proper number on the template. Number 6 for this example. Using a hammer, lightly tap the ball joint into the axle yoke, just enough to hold it in position. Using the domed universal adapter and 3-inch installation tube, assemble the ball joint press onto the axle yoke. Turn the forcing screw until everything is snug. Check alignment of all components, then tighten the forcing screw until the ball joint is seated. Remove the ball joint press and install the dust boot and retaining ring. Position the steering knuckle on the ball stud. Install only the upper ball stud nut at this time and torque to 75 foot-pounds, 101 Newton meters. Thoroughly clean the knuckle hub bore area as well as the back side of the hub and bearing assembly. Lightly coat the knuckle area with an anti-seize compound. Install the axle shaft, hub and bearing, and brake dust shield as one unit to the knuckle. Be sure the splined end of the axle engages fully with the differential side gears. Install all 3 hub-to-knuckle bolts and torque to 75 foot-pounds, 102 Newton-meters. Reconnect the tie rod onto the steering knuckle arm and install the ABS sensor to the knuckle. Install brake components and wheel. Tighten wheel lug nuts to 95 foot-pounds, 129 Newton-meters. Reinstall alignment equipment and compensate. Lower the vehicle onto alignment rack and perform a caster sweep. Using the raise and hold or jack and hold adjustment feature of your alignment equipment, again raise and support the vehicle just behind the lower suspension arms. Thread the lower ball joint nut onto the ball stud until the castellated nut lines up with the cotter keyhole. Slide a punch into the cotter keyhole. Using a 1 1/16 inch wrench, rotate the ball stud to adjust camber as needed. Lower a vehicle onto the alignment rack and recheck camber. Jounce the suspension to initially seat the ball stud into the steering knuckle. Remove the dowel pin from cotter pin hole and torque the ball joint nut to 80 foot-pounds, 109 Newton-meters. Insert cotter key. To set tow on this vehicle, access the total tow steer ahead bar graphs. Use the long adjuster tube connecting the outer tie rod to set total tow to specifications. Use the adjuster tube near the steering gear to set steer ahead to 0. Proceed with the rest of the alignment and road test the vehicle.